So it's Thursday, and today we were supposed to have the old kind of show with the audience and everything, but the one-on-one shows have been going so well and everybody seems to like them that last night we switched and we're doing Joe Rogan one-on-one, which I think is better. I like it better. It's more real. So that's what we're gonna do. Joe Rogan from Fear Factor, stand-up comic, mixed martial arts. I love the guy. I think he's really funny. I've never got to talk to him. So that's gonna be exciting. Stick around.
It's Rosie, baby. It's Rosie, baby.
One on one.
Listen up, it's the Rosie Show. You listen up, it's the Rosie Show.
One on one.
You listen up, it's Rosie, baby.
One on one.
Hello, Joe Rogan.
How you doing?
How are you?
What's up? Can I
Nice
get a
to
hug?
meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I have to say, I was all night listening to the Joe Rogan Experience. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Who puts it together with all those images and all the...
My employee, it's just me and him.
It's very enjoyable, and it's
thank you.
very brave of you, because the subject matter that you take is not usually... It's stuff that I've been getting in trouble for a lot of years.
Yeah, I know you have.
Yeah.
I was talking about that with your producer. We were talking about when I was watching The View, and I saw you talk about Tower 7.
Right.
And I was like, holy you know,
Well, I
this
was
is-
like, do you know how many buildings fell that day? And everybody was like, no.
Yeah.
And this was 2006, right?
That is the weirdest subject.
And it's a subject that you will get universally criticized for and called un-American. And
Well, not only that, like a kook, like you can't even bring it up. Like you can't even, like if you say, had that building fall, you go,
yeah.
They don't even, it's not even a topic of discussion. Like
Right.
it becomes, it's a taboo. That building fell like free fall into its base. No
Right.
building has ever done that.
And you know about NIST, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there are thousands and thousands of internationally renowned scientists, the best that humans have ever created, who said it is physically impossible. It defies the laws of physics.
I don't understand it. I mean, I saw that like architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, it's 1,500 different guys
Yes.
that have gotten together. I'm not smart enough or educated enough to know who's right or who's wrong, but I do know, I know a red flag when I see one, and I know when people are reacting almost religiously, when people won't look at something.
Yeah.
And when I look at how when you bring up Tower 7 or anything along those lines of like, hey, there might have been some prior planning, this
Right.
might have been something where people were attacked, and it might be a bigger picture than you think. Automatically, people just shut off. They don't want to hear it,
Now,
no matter how much evidence.
do you think that's because as a society there's this benevolent father theory where people cannot imagine that a father would do A, B, or C to his own child, whether that's incest or murder or horrific abuse? Some people can't even hold that concept in their head. If you're a person who can't, it's impossible to have a conversation about not believing the official story. Whether or not you know who did it and why is not the question to me.
Right.
You can actually say as an American, I don't believe the official story.
Right.
And still be crucified as a kook, talentless, and somebody who doesn't deserve to be in the country. Move is what people would say to me. Why don't you
Yeah.
move?
You're criticizing daddy.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was listening to your Joe Rogan Experience, which I have to say I just found this week, and it's fascinating to
Thank
me.
you. Thank
I'm
you.
like obsessively listening to all your podcasts now.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
And I was fascinated to hear that when you saw the film, JFK, the Oliver Stone film, and he proposed this basic theory that it was not a lone gunman, you thought to yourself, that's absurd. Why would anybody make a film like that, right? That was before you sort of had a different perspective on these kind of issues?
Well, I was more willing to believe that there was more than one person, more than just a lone gunman. What I wasn't willing to believe was that the government was willing to wage war for profit and to continue to wage war for profit. I thought that was just hippie nonsense. I remember being upset at that, and I was like, what proof do they have that they're going to war? I remember like leaving the theater going, why did they even add that in? Because it doesn't, like, you're just drawing a conclusion to why we're at war. I thought it was gross.
But that was before you knew about, let's say, Operation Northwoods.
It was before I knew about a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
So what was the turning point for you?
Just reality, just over and over and over again. The second Gulf War, I think, opened up a lot of people's eyes as to how preposterous it was when we went into Iraq during the Bush administration. It was just like, what? Why or what? Like, it didn't make any sense at all to anybody. And so many people were sort of just willing to go along with it because we were attacked and somebody had to pay or something. And it was like a very weird, vague sort of a justification for it. And that's when I sat back and I went, this is one of the nuttiest things I've ever seen in my life. There's a guy who used to be the CEO of a company that rebuilds countries after we blow them up, and now that guy's deciding to blow up countries, and that company is profiting, and we're watching it all take place on TV right in front of our very eyes.
And if you question it at
crazy.
all, you're crazy, un-American, and totally disenfranchised from.
That must be very frustrating to you.
Very.
When you were on The View, you were on, I mean, like I do cage fighting commentary and I make people eat bugs on TV. There's a totally different sort of a thing than being on daytime talk shows for, and I mean, a lot of them probably conservative women, right?
Yeah.
And did not want to hear that kind of stuff where someone is questioning the official story of 9/11. You don't think that there's investigators, you don't think there's cops looking into that, and then they just get really angry at you, right?
Yeah, and I think it was more the production staff was angry. I think that it was something that Barbara Walters didn't want to go near, and especially Bill Getty, who was the executive producer, is a very, very strong conservative Republican-leaning guy. So I think for him, it really made him step back. And part of the reason that I spoke out is that when I was first on the show, he insisted that we have this guy who wrote the Popular Mechanics article debunking all the 9/11 myths.
Yeah.
Well, he had this guy on, and I was listening to the guy, and I thought, now this is unfair, to have this guy on and to have no other side presented at all. And so the basic questions that would lead one to consider whether or not it's possible that there is another explanation for what happened. Those basic questions, like there were actually 3 buildings that fell into their own footprint at free fall speed on the same day, and it had never happened in the history of the world before.
There's a lot of chaos that goes along with any catastrophic situation like that. And I think a lot of people are scrambling, and there's a lot of miscommunication. And I bet a lot of people were probably saying, if in fact it did collapse on its own, the firemen were aware, I bet a lot of people were saying, hey, this thing is going to go. It's going to fall into itself. I don't know if that's possible. See, again, I'm not an architect, but maybe it's just such a crappy design that when it catches on fire, it just collapses like that.
But fire has never turned concrete into rubble in the history of the world, right?
It does seem ridiculous,
Yeah.
but I'm not smart enough to, I mean, I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be completely stepping out of school if I was arguing that it's impossible for a building to do that. And the idea of it, they all uniformly gave out at the same time. And it's a weird, that's a weird one.
Tune in Friday for the first part of my one-on-one interview with Dr. Oz. You hear the jokes all the time. The woman wants to talk and the man wants to watch football and get drunk. The woman, wants to talk about her feelings and the guy's like, why is that? Is it society's pressure on men to conform? And rather than why does 98% of the male population not do it, how do we find out how the 2% does? That, to me, is the more interesting question.
I think I have an answer.
Great.
It's my personal answer, but I think it's the right one for most men. It scares the crap out of us.
Really?
There's a lot of fear involved in that, and we spend most of our life overcoming fears about things we think we can cope with. Tackling somebody, doing surgery, showing up on time at work, whatever it might be. Being intimate is a scary process.
More with Joe Rogan when we come back.
Rosie.
One-on-one.
When you are so public about your opinions of things that are not mainstream yet, do you have any worry about how it will affect your career?
No, because my career is all me being me, luckily, somehow or another. I think because I'm too dumb to plan it any other way.
Right.
I'm not, I don't pretend to be anything other than who I am. And that way, if you like me, and if you don't, well, there you go, And did you always know you were funny? Did you have another job before you started doing it? I was a martial arts instructor.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I used to, I taught Taekwondo at Boston University. And,
Did you go to school there?
No, I just taught it there. I went to UMass Boston. But I really only went so people didn't think I was a loser. It was just completely so I could tell people that I was going to college.
Right.
Because I was just didn't know what I was doing when I graduated high school. So my whole life from the time I was 15 to 21, 22 was all martial arts competitions.
And then how did you go, well, the next jump is stand-up?
Well, I got talked into going on stage. I got talked into it by some friends of mine. It was 100% someone else telling me to try it. It was never my idea. I was always respectful of comedians. I always loved stand-up as an art form. I used to watch it, but I never thought I could do it. I just did not. I did not feel like I had that sort of a personality. I was very shy.
You were.
Yeah, I was very defensive and just shy. I was kind of insecure, very insecure. And so I just didn't, the idea of going on stage all the time in front of people to do that, to just get their approval, just was terrifying to me.
Now,
Which was weird because the idea of going in front of them and fighting someone was not terrifying. I did that all the time.
But you started that as a young kid. Is that
Yeah.
because did your parents say, were your parents married?
Yeah, no, they weren't married, no.
They were divorced when you were very young?
Yeah, my parents were divorced when I was 5, and my mother remarried when I was 7.
And that was a good relationship? You grew up in a happy...
The good one was the 7 on. The 7 on was great. The young one was terrifying. It was really bad.
Okay, so you decided, or your parents decided, your mom and your stepdad,
Martial arts, you
that
mean?
martial arts would be something that would help you overcome your shyness?
No. I just wanted to learn how to fight. I was tired of people picking on me.
And were they picking on you?
Yeah.
For what?
Well, I mean, you know, boys just pick on boys. It's just part of being a chimp. You know, it's just natural. It's
Right.
animals, they find the weak spot and they poke at it, especially when they're young. They don't have context, they don't understand. I mean, the issue with bullying in school is to let kids know the impact that bullying has on other people.
Right.
It's a weird natural human instinct to poke at weakness. And a lot of it is based on the massive insecurity that they have, whether it's in their own life because of their horrible personal situation or just because they're, you know, you're 15 and you're in high school and you can't believe you're going to be a man in 3 years, and maybe picking on somebody else takes you away from the pain of the reality of the craziness of life, you know?
Were you picked on in a physical way? You were beat up at school?
Well, I was pushed around. Nobody ever really like beat me up, but I knew it was probably coming unless I learned how to fight. I was like, it's just a terrible feeling to be a boy and to have a bunch of men where, you know, when you're in high school, you know, when you're dealing with 18-year-old kids and you're 14 or 15 and they're picking on you and you're like, wow, like I'm smaller than these guys. These guys are like basically men, and no one's gonna stop them. Like men can just beat you up. Like, oh, what a terrible feeling. Like,
Yeah.
it's when you're a boy and you're around other high school boys and you just make a wrong turn. Like, you can make a right turn and you find these dudes over by the AV room and they're smoking pot outside, like, hey man, what's up?
Right.
Or you could take the wrong turn and all of a sudden there's these meatheads that want to beat you up just
Right.
for a goof, and they do it all the time. That's a terrible situation to be in, to be a boy, you know, to worry. I think for men, your own personal sovereignty as far as the ability to defend yourself is very, very important. It's very important just for well-being, because the reality is we're still some sort of a weird chimp,
Right.
and people still mess with people, and it's, you know.
Did you pick Taekwondo or the martial arts over boxing for any particular reason? Was it the Karate Kid? Did you know a lot about
No,
it?
I boxed too. I did that as well. I picked Taekwondo at first because I found a really good school, and it was just a random thing. I was walking down the street. I went upstairs. I saw this guy working out, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. It was just a really good school.
And your parents were supportive of you doing it?
Yeah, they loved it. They loved, because you know, when you're a kid, you know, we have the same bodies that essentially animals had, you know, human animals had a million years ago or 10,000 years ago, when we had to live, you know, really difficult, dangerous lives. We had to, you know, go out there and fight off, you know, enemy hordes and go and hunt your own food and
Right.
carry wood. And, you know, our bodies are meant to exert a certain amount of energy. And when you don't exert any energy, you're tense and you're dealing with a lot of internal stuff that's unnecessary. And if you work out, you do two things. One, you blow out all that monkey energy. You
Right.
blow out so you're even, so then you don't have this need to overreact to things. And two, you develop an understanding of your place in the world. You develop an understanding of objectivity. You develop an understanding of discipline and focus. And it becomes like a vehicle for you to get through life with.
Since 14, you've continued to work out. You're obviously a very muscular, very buff. You've continued since 14.
Yeah.
You realized it was a positive thing in your life and you just kept on with it.
Yeah, it just becomes a part of my life for dealing with life, you know, like a good hard workout is, like, for me, always the best way to deal with life. And it's not even just like a physical, like a explosive workout. I mean, like yoga, just a good yoga workout is one of my favorite things to do, to just
Chill.
settle everything down. Because a lot of it is, you build this, when your body thinks, your mind is telling your body there's a problem. Well, your body is a 10,000-year-old organism that thinks problem means there's a cheetah. We got to get out of here, man. We got to grab a stick. We got to fight off some people.
Right, fight or
Something's going on.
flight, cortisol.
But meanwhile, it's just you can't make your mortgage. So your brain is sending this crazy signal to your body that we got an issue, and your body's like, we got to fight.
Right.
And then your body's like, there's nothing to fight here. We got paperwork. What do we do with this?
Right.
And it builds up, and you become a crazy person, and you're sitting in traffic giving people the finger and
Right.
screaming. I mean, that's where all that comes from.
So on the whole, it sounds like you're a pretty kind of zen, chill guy. Like
I try to be.
You do.
I try to be as even as possible. I try to be as, I try to react to things the best way I can. You know, try to look at it like if this was the best, the most ideal way to react to this. Like step back,
Right.
instead of just reacting, what's the most ideal way to react to that? And I try to do that.
We'll be right back with Joe Rogan.
Rosie.
One on one.
You were raised Catholic like I was?
Yeah.
And then you got to be a certain age and you realized that was not for you.
Well, my parents divorced. It was very strange. I was very religious when I was a little kid until I went to Catholic school. I did 1 year at Catholic school, and I was like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah.
This one lady, Sister Mary Josephine, she cured me. She cured me of religion. She really did. She
In
was
what way?
so evil. She was so evil and just hateful and angry with a bunch of little 6-year-olds. You know, I'll never forget that lady. I don't remember anybody's name from when I was 6, but Sister Mary Josephine, I'll never forget that. Just a mean, nasty woman. And just, I would remember thinking, like, she's married to God. Like, this is the most ridiculous. These people are crazy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was just starting to realize that people were crazy when I was like 5 or 6. I was just, I walked in on an incident where my father hit my mother. I'd never seen that before. And
you were 6?
I was 5, and we moved out of the house, and then I was going to Catholic school like right after that, and that's right when I turned 6, and that's when I realized, like, whoa, the world is not what you think it is. Like, I thought the world was, you know, here's my dad, like, he's like a superhero, he's my dad. Here's my mom, oh, she's so nice and she's so warm and loving, and this is just a happy family, and this is how it's always going to be, you know. And then you get this dose of reality when someone's screaming at someone, and you see violence in the house, and you just like, whoa, okay, now I got to reevaluate the whole thing.
Do you remember, was there violence before you saw that, or was that sort of...
I'm sure there was.
But you don't remember it?
I remember a lot yelling and stuff, but I'd never actually seen it.
So when you saw him hit your mom, did he know you saw it?
Oh, yeah.
And what happened?
Well, my mom just moved out. That was it.
But that moment. You walk in, you're 5 years old.
much.
You're a dad, yes?
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
15, 3.5, and 1.5.
Okay, so you know, at least with the 15-year-old, you've lived through the age of 5 and 6.
Yeah.
If that child ever saw you being physical, you went and saw the child you loved, you know, what would the reaction
It's horrific. The idea of it is horrific in the first place, right? The idea of any physical violence amongst loved ones, especially man to woman, especially, you know, stronger to weaker. It's just, it's disgusting. You know, even for a 5-year-old, there's no rationalization.
Did your relationship with your father completely change after that moment?
Dissolved. Yeah.
Completely?
Yeah, it dissolved slowly over the next couple of years, and then he stopped talking to us when I was 7. I haven't talked to him since.
I haven't spoken to my father either for many, many, many years. And I think when there is abuse in the home, it gives the child a position of power and authority that they don't want because the parent is somehow ashamed of their behavior and the child loses respect.
It programs your brain in a very strange way as well, because you're prepared for physical violence in the home at a very early age. And I think that's very dangerous. You know, the idea that it is commonplace or even possible for the people that you love, the people that you bring into your fold, the people that you're there unconditionally for, it's possible that that could turn ugly and someone could punch somebody in the head over nothing, and you could watch it. And then you're trapped in there. When does it come at you? Well, it probably would have came at me when I became, you know, threatening, when I was like 15 or 16 or something.
Correct.
That's probably when it would have came at me. But with my mother, you know, it's just watching it and being able, knowing that that's possible is very dangerous for a kid's developmental process.
And how much did you feel protected by your mother that she left right away?
Well, it was a smart lesson. You know, my mom's not dumb. You know, she just got in a bad situation and she was young and she was like, you know, F this, let's get out of here.
Well, you know, Joe, so many women are not able to do that for a variety of reasons,
Yeah,
whether it's emotional
economic,
or financial.
emotion,
Exactly.
yeah, sure,
So to
yeah.
me, that's such a heroic move on her part to go, this is not tolerable. I will not expose my children to this or myself. We are going.
People have a hard time doing things.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes even if it's doing something that's going to help them, they have a hard time moving from their couch, moving from their spot, moving from their position in life. They have a hard time making a big alter. I'm going to leave him. That's it. I'm going to go. They just can't for whatever reason. Some people are frozen in fear. You know, it's just the fear of acting sometimes will keep people in a terrible situation. And then, of course, there's the crazy manipulation that goes along in those kind of relationships sometimes where, you know, the person apologizes and they're so extra loving and it's almost like worth it that now they appreciate you so much and he'll never do it again. He made a mistake and it just becomes this crazy cycle.
But she did not fall for that.
No, she did not fall for that.
Major props to her. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister.
How old is she?
She's
Older?
43.
She's younger than you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she did not witness that. You were a 5 and a 3-year-old.
Yeah, she was a little too young to realize what was going on, I think. Right. I think for her it was just, you know, uprooting. You know, kids know when there's not stability and they know then when there's tension, you know, and it's just, I don't think she saw violence though.
Right. Has your dad tried to contact you since you've had all this success?
No.
No. Yeah, that would be pretty
That's
weird.
probably for the best, though.
I think you're right.
I mean, I don't hate the guy. I don't know him. You know, if I was 33 back in 1967 or whatever the hell it was, you know, I would have been an idiot too. You know, who knows?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what makes a person who you are. I don't know how much of it is environment, how much of it is, you know, you stumble down the right roads, you read the right books, and all of a sudden you're on a path and you got lucky. I don't know. I don't know how much of the first initial steps that develop you to get you through this world and to get you to boom, now you're Rosie O'Donnell. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? I mean, is it, you know, is it luck? I don't know. I mean, some of it maybe, yeah. I got to think some of it's fortune.
Right.
So I don't know what his deal is. I don't know how he became that guy. I don't know.
Right.
Obviously, somebody did some bad things to him, though. That's just a fact.
And same with my dad as well. And when, you know, everything was sort of at its peak, you know, that's the part that came out of me, which was surprising, was the compassion that I felt for what happened to you. Yeah. What happened to the 10-year-old little you that would, you know, now he has many siblings and they were all in various states of distress, whether it was alcoholism or whatever. So I knew there was some major stuff that went down. And I think that's when you fully become an adult, when you're able to see your parent not only as the one who was supposed to take care of you, but you can reframe that into their own entity who did what they were only able to do because they didn't get the kind of help that luckily you were able to get because you happened to be born in 1962 rather than 1932.
Yeah. I try to always look at people and look at them as babies and look at them as like, you know, and you have children and you know what it's like to raise someone from a baby to being a little person that you're hanging out with. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like when you look at someone that's just completely a mess, I always look at them like a baby. Yeah. I'm like, there's just a ball of potential that somehow or another got into the wrong hands, didn't get the right amount of love, didn't get protection, didn't get reinforcement, didn't get education, and then boom, here you are. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you're 45 and you're just crazy with a swastika on your forehead. Right. You know, I always look at them like babies. I see some people in the news, like, and they have mug shots, and they're looking, and I never go, oh, look at this a-hole, I'm glad they got him, lock him up. I look at it like, look, that's a baby. That's a baby, cute little boy that now all of a sudden became this person.
We'll be right back with Joe Rogan.
Rosie.
One-on-one.
When I see somebody with an obvious issue, whether it's, you know, weight, which is something I relate to, and I see somebody very large, I always think, first thing, what happened to you? That's my first thought when I look at them.
Yeah, that's the right thought. You know, I mean, that's the non-judgmental or at least honestly assessing thought. You know, when you look at people, the number one problem with people is not resources. It's human beings treating other human beings with love. If we can get that accepted universally, if the world could be operating the way you operate with your closest of friends and loved ones, if you're a healthy person, then together everybody can be really cool. But it doesn't always work that way. Right. And you stumble into these patches of disastrous human beings, you know, and they have this ripple effect. And the real way to fix the world is to stop that, to stop children from being abused, and to figure out how to get these people and reset their brains to get them to stop being a-holes.
Right.
You know, it's like there's a way to do that. I don't know what it is. We're going to figure it out, though, as a human race. Ultimately, we're going to realize that you could, you know, come up with all the solar power you want. You can, you know, have genetic engineering to the point where we can live to be 1,000 years old. But if you can't cure insensitive human behavior, if you can't stop that, if you can't stop people from realizing that the human organism is that. It's a super organism. You're a part of a giant mass of life. It's not just one body. It's not one individual. That's why you can't be alone. That's why the worst thing they could do to you in prison is to put you in a cell away from all the other prisoners. You would think that was, if you're going to go to prison, the most awesome thing would be just leave me alone. Leave me alone for 10 years.
Right.
Like, you can't do that. You'll go crazy. You'll scream and yell and claw at the walls. You'll have insane fake friends that you'll talk to. It's because we are a part of another. We are a part of a giant thing.
There's more with Joe Rogan when we get back.
Rosie.
One on one.
Did you see the documentary I Am?
No.
I'm gonna get that for you too. It's the third. I love doing these one-on-ones because you actually get to see what the person is really about. I didn't really know anything about you. I had heard a little bit about your stand-up and your Carl Messina, who I don't even know that guy, truthfully. You know, when you're 50 and you got 4 kids, you're not so into the stand-up comic scene. But I had seen on YouTube the whole thing with that guy, and then I knew you from Fear Factor. And but to get to actually talk to you this way, there's a guy, Tom Shadyac. He directed all Jim Carrey's movies. He had a traumatic brain injury. His father actually was one of the founding doctors of St. Jude's with Danny Thomas, and he was going to kill himself because of this Spalding Gray-like traumatic brain injury that couldn't stop the ringing in his ears. And he said before he died, he wanted to answer one question: what's wrong with the world and what can I do about it? So he took a documentary film crew and he went and spoke to people, scientists, different progressive thinkers in the world, and sort of prove the theory that you just said about the interconnectedness of all living things. It's one of the most profound documentaries I've ever seen in my life.
Wow, I Am.
I Am. It's called. I'll get you a copy. I'm sure we might have one here. Let's talk a little bit about the UFC. You might be surprised to know, but I'm sure they told you I'm a huge fan of the UFC.
I've seen pictures of you and Uriah Faber.
I love him. I think that guy is going to be.
Him too.
He's, first of all, I've heard people who are commenting during the fight, all of the commentators, saying pound for pound, they think he's the best athlete they've ever seen in any sport.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right? And not only
Well,
is
he's
he...
an amazing athlete, for sure.
But he's such a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
After each fight, he always thanks the other guy. You never see him angry. You never see him enraged. When he's like totally in a position that you know most people would tap out, he doesn't care. I have never seen a guy who like moved me in that way, and he's stunning. I'm a little bit of a cougar, but he's stunning too. I think he could have a career like The Rock.
Yeah, oh sure.
In movies and
well,
stuff.
He's a very bright guy, you know, and he's also really kind of inspirational. He's like a big board by his wall. I interviewed him for the UFC website, and he's got like this thing by his wall. He wakes up to like all the different things he wants to accomplish and everything. It's like super goal oriented, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, really inspiring when you see people like that.
I agree. That's what I felt by watching him fight. How I got into it was in 2006, I was doing a film in Detroit, and there was not a lot of stuff on TV, and UFC was in the hotel, it was on all the time, and I started watching it every night. I remember when it first came out, and there was a lot of controversy, and it seemed like it was a mix between that World Wrestling crap that's all show, and there wasn't a lot of athleticism that was able to be shown and featured. But when they went away sort of and came back, I think now it's the most exciting sport to watch, bar none. How did you find yourself to be the commentator that you are now there?
Well, I started out in 1997 with them. I was the post-fight interviewer. And that was when we were in little places like Dothan, Alabama, and Augusta, Georgia, and we would have to fly in these little propeller planes, and it was weird. We'd do it in like high school auditoriums. They'd be half filled. It was very strange. And I did it for a couple of years, and then I got the job. They just needed someone to do post-fight interviews. It just so happens that my manager knew the guy who was the producer, and they were, hey, we need someone to interview fighters after they fight. And I was like, I'll do it.
And it had nothing to do with your stand-up. It was just they needed somebody who knew about martial arts?
They not only did they not talk to me about what to do. No one even told me what was going to happen. This is what they did. They brought me there. They gave me a microphone. They put an earpiece in me. And they go, okay, ready, Joe? We're going to come to you in 3 seconds, or whatever it was.
Right.
And they just said, just start talking about the event. And so I just started talking. Like, nobody explained to me what I was going to do, how to interview people. It was a weird organization back
But was it
then.
on the podcast or was it on TV? Where was it being broadcast?
It was all pay-per-view.
It was.
It was cable pay-per-view for a while, but then it got banned from cable, and then it was only on like direct TV. It was really like, as bush league as you can get, And the people that were running it, like, they couldn't get it. They weren't equipped to get it like sanctioned by athletic commissions.
Right.
They really couldn't handle it's a big event trying to get a sport made legal in states. It takes a lot of money.
Especially
it takes
because
a lot of
it started off with kind of a negative kind of vibe, right?
Very much so. When I was on news radio and I used to tell people that I was going to cage fighting to do comedy, they were like, I was taught, like I was saying I was doing porn. Really.
Right, exactly.
It was like I was telling them I was doing something horrible. Like, I'm going to go watch people cage fight.
Right.
And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like,
Right.
you need a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, you need pills or something.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite fighter?
No. No, not a favorite. I have my favorite guys are the guys who are real martial artists. Like George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, John Jones. These guys are real martial artists.
Right. I can't stand Mike Brown because of that lucky punch that he hit Uriah when Uriah wasn't
Mike
looking.
Brown's a friend of mine. He's
I know.
a
I
great
can't
guy.
stand him.
He's a great
If
guy.
I ever see him, I would
You
say to
love
him,
him. You would
shame
hug
on
him.
you, you
I
lucky
swear
bastard.
to you.
Twice he beat him.
I swear to you, you would hug him.
I would.
He's a good guy. He's
Yeah,
a great guy.
I love when there was the one guy, I forget his name, but he's one of the original guys, and he tried to make a comeback and he didn't, but he was crying when he lost and he thanked everybody and he said, I'm done. And they did a wonderful profile. I wish I could remember his name.
Randy Couture?
Yeah, no, not Randy Couture. He lives in Vegas, I believe, and he has a wife, and he's the same class as Jens Palmer.
Jens Pulver?
Pulver, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
He fought Uriah once. Yeah.
Yeah, he's fought BJ Penn. He's fought a lot of guys. He's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever realize did that you think establish you in a way on TV that you didn't expect?
I don't know. It was, but when I was doing that, it was like, what's the Fear Factor guy doing that?
We will be right back right after this. Hey everybody, I'll be tweeting live tomorrow night during the show, 7 to 8 Eastern Time. Tune in. Tweet me at Rosie during my one-on-one interview with Dr. Mehmet Oz. If you're not on Twitter, you can post on my Facebook page. Find me tomorrow night at Rosie, live, 7 to 8 Eastern Time. Don't miss it. Go behind the scenes with me and my crew every day at Rosie.com. See what we're really doing when the show's over.
It's not your average work environment.
You get access to all the staff, me, the dogs, the kids, our lives. Go to Rosie.com and find out what we're up to.
The Rosie Show has the best audience in the world, so we load them up with the best gift bags around. Thanks to Everybody's Nuts, Fiber Plus, Secret Deodorant, and Snuggie for giving our audience some really cool stuff.
Rosie.
1-on-1.
So let's talk about Fear Factor. When did that start?
That was 2001, I think.
And did they have a casting call? They wanted comedians who would be willing to do this?
Well, they brought me in because I was already on an NBC show before that called News Radio, and I knew Jeff, the casting guy, brought me in, and it was. I thought it was ridiculous. Like they were explaining to me this show,
Right.
and so I started mocking it and started making fun of them. But being like good-natured, but I just can't help if something's silly. I'm gonna start making fun of it.
Well,
I
if
can't
somebody's
help it.
going to eat a slug, you can't really take it
Yeah.
seriously, right?
Well, exactly. So I'm in an office with people and I'm laughing at them. I go, you're gonna sick dogs on people.
Right.
So a person's gonna on NBC.
Yeah.
They're just gonna sick dogs after him. I'm like, real? This is a real show?
Do you remember in the 90s, there were all of these YouTube videos from Japan? They had
Yeah.
crazy-ass game shows like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
we were all thinking how horrible that culture was that they would dare to do that. Cut to 20 years later, here we
Way
are.
crazier.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you did that for 6 years.
We did it for 6 years, then we just started doing it again.
But it was a vastly popular show for 6
Yeah.
years. And that kind of fame, how did you deal with that? Because I know you're on News Radio, but this was, Fear Factor was sort of boom.
Well, it's manageable. It's just people being nice.
Yeah.
It's just people saying hi to you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it gets a little weird, but that becomes your new reality. You know,
Yes.
your new reality is everywhere you go, if there's 10 people, 3 of them are going to know who you are. You know, and that's.
And how do your children react when that happens, when you're in public?
Weirds them out a little.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you try?
How do yours?
Yeah, it weirds
You're
them
much
out.
more famous than I am. What is it like with you when you're out with them?
When I was on my TV show in the 90s, it was really big, right? In terms of my notoriety and people also felt that they knew me like a friend.
Right.
So they would come over and go, hey, Ro, and some of them would pick up my son. Is that Parker? And they'd literally pick him up. So I got to the point where I said, whenever I'm out with my kids, if somebody said, excuse me, Rosie, I say, I'm out with my children, and, well, could I just have a picture? I'm like, you're going to have to ask them. And my kids had no problem going, no. No problem. So now they're older, and they sort of are more okay with it, and they're used to it. But, you know, it's a hard line to walk because you never want to be unkind to anyone. And as you say, most people are genuinely loving. But you also want to try to have some kind of connection where your child feels the priority always, right?
Yeah, and you know, you do open yourself up to all possibilities when you become a famous person.
Right.
You know, things can get weird.
When you started doing stand-up, did you think fame was going to be the end result?
No, when I started doing stand-up, first of all, when I first started doing it, I thought of it as something I would try for a little while. I thought of it as, well, I'm just going to mess around and just see if you know, I could actually develop an act and just put it together for a little while. And then when I finally sort of committed to it, the best I could have hoped for was to be able to make a living.
How long did you do stand-up before you had a TV break?
I think it was like 5 years. I got on MTV, the half-hour comedy hour, and then next thing you know, I'm on a sitcom. It was like that. It was the craziest thing ever. It was just I got a development deal, no acting experience whatsoever, and all of a sudden I'm, you know, standing in front of a camera trying to rehearse lines. I didn't know. Like they would say, "Joe, can you step upstage?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Where's upstage?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? I'm
Right.
standing flat." Like,
First time I did a movie was with Fran Drescher, a horrible film called Car 54, Where Are You? But they said to me, you're doing off-camera lines. I had no idea what that meant, you know. And then they had to teach me how to hit my mark because I would look down at the mark, you know. But it's great when you have somebody there who will kind of shepherd you like she did.
Yeah.
Did you have a comic who kind of said, hey, come here, let me help you out, kid?
No, yeah, I just kind of, well, definitely when News Radio, Phil Hartman helped me out a lot, as did Dave Foley. He helped me out a lot as well.
So you were on the show when Phil died?
Yeah.
That's a hard thing.
Yeah, that was a hard thing.
Had you
Very
had anyone
unfortunate.
that you knew in your life die before that?
Not like that. No, I never knew someone who murdered someone that I liked. You know, especially that I loved. Especially when I was trying to get him to divorce her for like a long time. You know, I'm like, because of my childhood, I guess, and my personal life experiences, I'm always like, if it is any hint of anger or violence, just run.
Exactly.
Just get out of there, man.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You guys are screaming at each other, throwing things at each other?
And there are kids in the house?
Yeah, like, what is going on, man? You got to get out.
Yeah.
You know, get out when people are mean to you. Get out when people are insulting to you in public. And she was like, she wouldn't like insult him in public. It was like really creepy stuff where you would have to like bite your tongue and like wait for it all to die down. And, you know, and he was a guy who cared so much about people's opinions of him. He cared so much about his presentation. Like, it was important to him to be a married guy, to be a family guy. He thought that was a big part of his identity as a celebrity, you know. And so he also truly loved his kids.
Well, that's what I
truly
remember.
loved his wife too. As
Yeah.
crazy and effed up as she was, he did love her. They couldn't figure out how to keep it together for whatever reasons.
Right.
You know, for whatever reasons, you know, it wasn't perfect. But when you know someone that killed someone that you love, it's like, and then they killed themselves. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's just, it just reshapes reality. It reshapes what is possible. And for me, it reaffirmed how I always felt. I was like, you can't be around anybody that's got that in them. You can't, you know, you better not have that in yourself, and you can't be around anybody that has it in them. You can choose paths in this world, and that's a very important one.
How long have you been married?
On paper, 2 years.
Not on paper?
Oh, I've been with her for a while.
A long time.
Yeah.
Is she the mother of 3 children, or just
Yes.
the 2 little ones?
Yeah.
Even
one of them is not my biological kid, the 15-year-old.
You adopted him?
No, it's
her
my
child.
wife's child.
Understood. And how do you find being with a parent or a co-parent, step-parent of a teen? Because I have found it's quite a challenge.
She's an awesome kid. You know, she's not just a daughter, she's like my friend. And I've worked really hard on making sure that we talk to each other as openly as possible, like even about boys and weird stuff that she feels uncomfortable talking to me about it. It's really important that I have conversations with her where she never feels like she's out of the loop.
I gotta say, it's so nice to get to talk to you. I really didn't know what you were about until I started researching for this interview. And I think that Joe Rogan Experience on the web is fantastic, and that people need to go follow that. And Fear Factor starts again when?
It's almost over, I think. I think we only have 1 or 2 episodes left.
What's the weirdest thing they did this season?
I can't really tell you.
Oh, really? It hasn't aired yet?
Well,
Tell me one that aired.
I'll tell you off air because it's ridiculous and it might not even ever air because they're trying to debate whether or not we should do it. Well, they went way further with this one than they ever did with the previous season.
Has anyone ever been hurt phically?
Not any worse than you would get playing like touch football, luckily.
Well, that's a good line.
But you know, it is the reality of it is there's risks involved. Unfortunately, when you have cranes and trucks and all this craziness going on, things can happen.
Right.
But what we have is the team that Fear Factor's put together are the best stunt guys they could have who look at things and evaluate things the safest way possible and work out plan B, plan C, what if this happens? They work it all out to the nth degree, and then they put together as reasonably safe a stunt as you can get when you're catapulting someone off the top of a penthouse building and they catch a net, and there's a lot of craziness involved.
Right.
Like we hope we don't ever hurt anybody, but so far, luckily, we've been very lucky. And I shouldn't even say luckily because those guys work very hard at keeping it safe. But it is a really ridiculous thing to be a part of.
It is.
Yeah.
But you do it well.
Thank you.
You really do.
Very much. And I'm so happy to be on your show too. I've always been a fan of yours, and I always feel like as stand-up comedians, we all have some sort of a weird bond.
I actually do too. There's like a little fraternity, right?
For sure.
Well, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Do me a favor, will you sign our wall?
Sure.
And then we'll take a photo, and then you can get the hell out of here. Tune in Friday for the first part of my one-on-one interview with Dr. Oz. When that heart is bleeding out, when you know I'm going to lose this one, is that going through your head? I think the reason you resonate with women is the same reason that Bill Clinton does. Recently I went with Michelle again she was getting
sick a lot, I guess.
No, she's just, actually, truthfully, she's trying to get pregnant.
Oh, congratulations.
Right? So.